No, you're good. It's good. We're intimate. Personalized. Don't worry about it. So I'm Jennifer Ward. I teach high school English, mostly 10th grade at Haverford High School. And we have Jenna and Emily and Kristen who were students in my class. They're going on to greater things. They're joining us today that have gone through part of what we're going to be sharing a little bit about today.
And I'm Christy Brennan. I used to be the elementary librarian. My fifth graders work with Jazz High School students for this project.
So,
So logistically, there's a link up here to the Bitly. We'll get to our presentation, and there's tons of stuff in the speaker's notes if you're there. There's also around if somebody wants to take notes there. It's really cool. If not, they're there. So the two are going to have a tendency to go a little overboard on the speaker's notes. Yeah, so tons of stuff. More than you'd ever need. And it's nice there.
because we're sort of small, so like seriously, like it's more conversation based. Like we're much more interested in kind of hearing like what brought you here today, what you built to get out of, talking more about mentorship and passion based learning and how those two fit together. So at any point, just jump in with whatever questions you guys have. I'm curious, where is everybody from?
New York, Martin County.
And you teach there?
Yeah,
Where do you teach?
social studies special ed for high school.
New York and high school English also. And actually, we tweeted about 20 times. I did it with my kids for the first time this year.
Yeah, how'd it go?
It went really well.
Did it?
I found there were some missteps that I've kind of been trying to write and reflect on immediately, which I never do, so I can fix the problem for next year. But the kids who got it and really worked in it, I had some phenomenal results. But I'd like to figure out ways to motivate the students who fall behind very quickly and have trouble catching up.
Yeah, because that's the piece that I ran into, especially my first few go-rounds. The kids that naturally will sort of as the snowball.
Yes.
So there's
It got to the point with me for a lot of my kids where it was close to the end of the year, I can have you move backwards, I'll cut you off here, and now you're gonna, all my other kids are doing this great work, and you're gonna need to reach the prep work instead because we have no alternative. And it might.
yeah.
When it worked, it was fantastic.
I'm Jill, and I'm from Manalapan, New Jersey. I teach 6th grade language arts. And I just started towards the end of the school year to start to hear about Genius Hour and 20 Time and was interested in it. I try to give my students choice in their writing as much as possible, but sometimes I find myself steering more towards this is the curriculum and this is what I have to do, or when I see my students that you give them the choice and they don't know what to do with it. They just sit there.
It's so overwhelming. It's just like deer in headlights.
Right. So that was one of my summer projects, was that I wanted to learn more about this whole idea and ways that I can use it in my classroom.
Yeah, and you guys have all just sort of done this too. Like the thing that we started with, like Genius Hour or 20% time or Passion Based Learning, like it's a lot of the same stuff, and it goes by a bazillion different names, and it goes like there's so many different iterations of it too. So we've got the way that we've done it. It's by no means like the best way of doing it. It's worked for the most part for us. But like, please share your experiences too, or things that you've learned along the way, so we can kind of build some of that collaboration and build some tools together. Question?
Okay, fine. So I did it with my 10th grade, and I learned how to use iMovie as well. So then they made an iMovie about our process. So we're writing in 90 seconds. So sort of there, so we'll tell you a little bit about, I guess, sort of the quick version of what it looked like in high school, what it looked like in elementary school. But first we were gonna start by thinking about sort of why mentors were important, why they matter. So there's a link in here to the Padlet, but you don't have to use it if you want, pop something on it, and you can use Padlet before.
We're small enough to like,
Yeah,
we
we
should
should
chat
talk,
too.
yeah.
Because for part of this, like for us, when we first connected, which was a little over a year ago, both of us were doing like this passion-driven learning sort of thing. But as part of doing it, we were also thinking about like how we might bring the outside in. So then where do you look for mentors? And so it started for us kind of as a personal journey, like thinking through like who are the people that have mentored us along the way? Where do we look to find information? Where do we find our mentors? And so that's kind of where we started. So it would be kind of, I'm curious, like everybody involved, including you guys, where do you find your mentors?
I've never done passion projects before, so I don't really have a good answer, but there's a girl in my school district who has done it, who has presented about it, so she's been an awesome mentor, and I guess whenever I do eventually try to do it, it will be him.
Get ready.
So and that's huge because I have found,
That's so helpful.
like, I think we're both in buildings where we're the only people that are doing it.
Yeah, I would be the only person doing it in my building.
And it can be really overwhelming.
Yeah. And lonely, like how do you know where to go? And it helps if you have someone that's like right there that you can go to. But I don't know, did you have that?
I think for me, a lot of that I would tweet things with the hashtag 20time and Genius Hour.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of help that way when I had questions, or I started tweeting on student blogs and work and get feedback from a lot of different areas like that. And then helping students find mentors, I really pushed for it. And then I found that if a student, I ran into the same problem where a student who dropped the ball or people did it, some of my students were like, look, I'll show you, I reached out to these 5 different people, no one responded.
Yep.
And sometimes it just be like, well, all right, you've done your work. We can't do anything about that. And I feel like I did it in too short of a time frame, so it didn't give me enough time to kind of then go actively help them after the fact. So I kind of ran into some roadblocks there.
In the district that you guys are in, do you have a lot of freedom to use social networks? Is there?
No.
I can use or nonsense.
So yours are mostly blocked, then I'm assuming like you don't have access to Twitter.
No Twitter, no YouTube, big as a lecture, no, there were no as a
She
blog.
can't show pictures of her kids or anything like that.
Yeah,
We signed off.
yeah.
My district is opt out, and none of my kids opt out. So.
I think mine will be next year,
Really?
yeah. Yeah, I think as of the other day, but.
So,
Jump in, Jen.
I find, jumping on Jim or adding on, that Twitter is a huge help. This isn't really related to this, but recently long story short, I wanted to buy tickets to a concert. All sold out, they were $30. I went on StubHub. Rich people took all the tickets, put them out for $110. I was like, I'm not paying that. So I went on Twitter and I tweeted, does anyone selling a ticket for the 975 show in December for the original price? I'm not paying $110, hashtag 975. So all the fans would see it, and I was getting a lot of help. So keep using Twitter. It helps.
Yeah, that's like the biggest thing I've learned this year with any question that I've had, Twitter has been like invaluable.
and that's something I've modeled with my kids a lot. They'll ask me things, and I'll stop, and I'll be, and I do teach them, then I'll help Twitter classes, and talk about those questions a lot of times. But I want to start incorporating more into my actual class work and have them doing to kind of build towards this.
The different types of extra point.
Yeah.
But we did, like, as a class, we didn't really do it as a thing too much. I was the one doing more of that than I think you guys are correct me if I'm wrong. We didn't use Twitter a whole lot individually, but we had like our class account, which I kind of took control of. So that would be something moving forward that I'd like to do a little bit more with. Oh, you were defective mentors.
Well, similar to what you had said, I haven't done this, and if I were, I would be the only one that would be doing it. I do have another language arts colleague who I work very, very closely with. We plan together weekly, but she kind of takes my lead, or I take lead. She, kind of goes along with it. So I know she would be willing to dive in and try with me, but it would be just a joint effort, trying to learn together ourselves. So I think we would definitely be seeking some sort of outside help. And as far as the students go, at the moment, I mean, their only mentors are each other in their classrooms. They don't have a lot of real access outside of that.
Ours, I jumped into this 2 years ago as a first year teacher too. So mentors were something I was thinking about as well. And the one on I was doing, and it's in library, so there's only ever one of you. And elementary school did that. So that was super isolating. So Twitter was super helpful in connecting with other teachers who were doing similar things. That was really great. And also for our kids, because we were in 5th grade, we were thinking about who mentors them. We talked about their mentors, their parents, that kind of thing. We also were starting a school-based, school-wide mentor program for 5th grade last year we knew. So we talked a lot about that, and they actually ended up working with the 10th graders who were my 5th graders mentors, and then my 5th graders took what they learned from you guys and became mentors to our kindergarten and 1st grades. So we sort of layered it, and that was really interesting too.
And I think for me too, because like, I've been doing like project-based stuff, it's been called a different name every single year. Like, at first we did culture projects about 6 years ago, and then they became like 20% time projects, and now they're like, we branded them now as the Have Passion Project. We already have referred, so it lends itself really nicely to hashtagging things as have. Have to write, have to read, have passion. But I think for, at least for me, like, the reaching out on social networks and finding like other people who are doing similar things, like at least as far as like a high school English teacher, like I would not have been able to have the confidence I think with the benefits of what Kevin Burkhauser and his students are doing out in California, or what H.H. Giuliani is doing with some of the stuff globally. So finding those connections, even if they're not in person, has been incredibly helpful. Joy Kerr, Joy Kerr's Live Finder alone, and I think you threw a link to it. It's in various places in the presentation. If you haven't found it, it's the end all be all. You will find teacher blogs and student examples and like every possible iteration of Genius Hour and passion projects and whatever you want to call it. But it all kind of like what we realized is what Christy does with her 5th graders in the library looks a bit different than what I do with my 10th grade students in terms of homework. So you do more of like a Genius Hour, and you're going to explain that sort of in a second. And I do more of what would traditionally look like as a 20% time. But there's a lot of connection with that idea of students are at the center of it, driving that inquiry. The more that you can put students in that place of, I need to find this answer, I need to find my passion, I think that really changes the dynamic of the classroom, but it also changes the way that students work with ideas and work with writing about ideas. I'm an English teacher, I really don't care about how they write about it. So, but like there's a difference that happens there versus like if I say, let's read a thematic essay, I'm like, and not that that's not a valuable skill, writing an analytical essay, but that the potential of bringing in sort of choice and voice. So this is kind of a little how we got started, a little bit of background with it too. And Chrissy kind of led us in this.
Yeah, so it was a bit of an interesting journey. I ended up meeting Angela Myers came to Downingtown High School near us, and Jen and I spent the day watching her whole Youth Matter passion-based learning, all of watching her do this with a whole bunch of high schoolers, 2 days like jumping in, immersing themselves for 2 days straight.
Yeah, it was the
entire 9th and 10th grade.
Just passion-based.
Yes, simultaneously in 2 days. It was wild. Yeah, to watch them and to like watch how it was organized was so interesting. And we were just sitting there like tweeting, taking crazy looking notes of like, what on earth can we pull from this and bring back? Because we're not doing it with the whole 9th and 10th grade in 2 days. That's crazy. So I ended up proposing for the teachers of summer book group, because that makes handle. Not writing. We got a really good mix actually of teachers from across the district, across grade levels, content areas. Jen, everybody was pretty much represented, I guess. And we all read Angela's book on passion-driven classroom. We actually were able to speak with her, with both of her book club. It's so fun. And these were my notes, which is also example. So if you're on the digital part, there should be a link at the bottom. It pulls up, comes to life with all kinds of videos, articles, all the stuff that we sort of done, like, curated, shared out with the teachers, and then I ended up actually resharing that with our 5th graders as they sort of figured out what it is that I was talking about. But that was sort of our inspiration, sort of jumping off.
And then it led to like how we went into the classroom with it in the fall, right? So, and Christy's gonna take what it looks like in the elementary level first.
Sure. So when we went to downtown and saw Angela Taylor, they did something called park mapping. That's sort of their jumping off point, where the students sort of made this map. She'll tell you more about them. They look like these, with different passions and branched off into all different sorts of things. So for our 5th grade, it actually started, I came back, that was only the second to last day of school, we were in downtown. So I came back for the summer with my 5th grade team, because I couldn't shut up about talking about this, you have to do this, and we were totally game. So we sat at Starbucks and planned that whole like September program, and came up with that they would start their year with the kids individually, making park maps about all the different things that they liked, that they were passionate about, kind of going that way. And ended up identifying sort of 5 themes that they were going to have for 5th grade. It's also the first year they switched for content areas, so they wanted continuity, the team of teachers from home spaces. So we sort of came up with their like 4 values, I guess, if you want to put it up. So they were going to focus on like vision, change, innovation, action, teamwork, I think is what we came up with. And we paired each one with a mentor text. And then in library, we sort of took their heart maps and said, okay, you're going to pick something from here. And we talked about creating driving questions. And then I sort of sent them off to go through the research process to 5th grade library. So they sort of dove that way. So we sent them in 75 different directions. Total chaos first time around. But it was really good. So they sort of went all out on that. And then we sort of kept cycling back to it too. So this is the second year we did the same setup that we started that whole September piece was for this part. So then their teachers actually went back to those 5. They had 5 picture books that they started their years with in homeroom. They actually went back to those at the end of the year, and then they had the kids write these letters. This time to teachers in the building or in other buildings that they had encountered, sort of like a thank you notes, and they were so precious about how the teachers met. So it's really full circle.
And for sort of the high school level, how we started, and I think I said we've been doing iterations of this in the past, and Jenna was one of the first ones that went through when we did 20 times, which was me standing up in front of the room going, well, you can research whatever you want to research. You were one of them too. You were like,
I was like, okay, sorry.
And so I learned kind of going through that and also getting feedback from the first go-through students that was not helpful. There's not like the kids who knew what they wanted to do and they it was fine, like they ran, but then there was the slew of them that it took a little while to get into it. So then this go around, one of the things that we learned was talking with Angela, and in her book she talks about how passion is the thing that you're willing to suffer for. And so this go around with my group of 10th graders, what we ended up doing was I gave them a sheet of paper and didn't really introduce the project at all, and I said, you got 8 half by 11, tell me what passion is. They had one night to do with whatever, and we used that as the starting point to talk about what's the difference between passion and interest. Because interest isn't going to carry you through. A hobby's not going to carry you through. You have to really have a passion for something or about an issue. So having that conversation first changed the dynamic a little bit. I still had students that by 2 weeks in were like, yeah, no, I'm ditching this, and we started completely somewhere else. Actually 4 weeks in to an 8-week project that ditched it and did something different too. But by having that conversation first helped, and then we did a really similar thing.
Yeah, we did something actually similar to that too. My 5th grade, they also hackathon, which I just they have to. So I gave them a blank 1 slide in a presentation and said, what you need, move it that way. So they started with their interests, which we had learned the first time too, and they hard-like it because their research is really fast. So this time we took their interests, whatever we came up with on the slide, and then sort of went from there and turned it into a question. Sort of
And
that
was the
so
key.
helpful. That was yes.
It was when like I said, the first go around, Jenna's group worded it as, I'm going to research blog, which puts a stop, it's an endpoint and inquiry. the second go around this year, it was making sure that they had a research question, because there's no end point there. It's always, you're building towards inquiry. So that was something that both of us had kind of worked going through. It's really critical to have that formulation of questions pretty early on. And that's actually what we started with the passion maps. They did their what are you passionate about? We came up with sort of like big categories, and then everyone kind of stood around the table and was like, well, what do you have a question about that topic? Or where does this lead you? Or what does it make you think of? In order to get some of those initial ideas out there and start to wonder, and having that wonder formulate into questions, which later on students at the high school level worked into proposals, pitch videos, but you start with that question in mind. That's sort of one of the key pieces that we worked with it. And then from there it was, right now I'm clearly not an expert on like cake decorating, so we need to find mentors to connect the students with, and so that's sort of where we went next, I think, with it.
What were some of the questions that they came up with? Because my kids are freshmen, but they are like mentally in grade. So I'm like somewhere in between what you guys are doing, and I'm like, I don't know what the best tactic is.
So I guess the fifth grade questions were all over the place. And actually the second time around, first time around we didn't do those questions. Not good. So they all were like, I really like Minecraft. Oh, great. Let's go learn about that for 6 weeks. So the second time around we said, okay, it has to be a question. And it was really hard for them to take that, I really like Minecraft, and find a question. So what I actually had them do, I had them go interview their kindergarten or first grade MD and have them write questions of what they wonder about. First graders have no problem with that. And they came back and they said, okay, first graders wonder, one of them was, why do only first graders use their teeth? And not my kids. So like my fifth grader came back and like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you're gonna start. So we actually started this time around. They had to find an answer to a first grader question first, and then had to go try and formulate their own. And I think that was helpful for them in that sort to get into that sort of mindset, so that we actually ended up with really interesting questions. We had one who wanted to know why the Wawa logo is the way it is, which was interesting. It wasn't just, well, I really like Wawa. It was, we added that question piece in, or we had a bunch of video game ones, and like how to make video games, stuff like that.
And those were the ones,
Those were
when the kids came in with those kind of questions, like, it was really easy to put it, or
Right,
those were topics.
topics.
It was like how to put into questions. So the kids were already kind of came in knowing what they wanted to do, like, you introduce this, and they were like, I'm running up, how do you make a video game app?
Right.
Boom, like, they were gone. But I had students, Kristen, totally putting you on the spot here, you're here then. Do you want to tell them how you came up with yours?
Well, I struggled finding a topic, and I was conferencing with the scores, and I was telling her about my problems finding a topic, and I was talking about how I'm very indecisive, and then that kind of turned into my topic, which was having a class in my school to help people decide what they want to do with their lives and kind of give them a little help and push in the right direction. So that was kind of helpful for me, like just conferencing.
And I was gonna say, you came up too with that question, like, we kind of, as we were talking, that idea of like, well, not everybody knows what they want to be when they grow up, so how do people figure out what it is that they want to be? And then, I don't think you knew the second half of that, which was a student in my first law class was going through a similar sort of struggle, and was kind of spinning wheels and not knowing what to do, and I asked him, well, what are you passionate about? He was like, I don't know, what's passion? So I told him, there's a good question. So we became this topic. And luckily we were able to connect with Angela Mayers and be able to do an interview with her. But like, sometimes it's that, like, you don't know how you're gonna get to those questions. And so, I think allowing for time to do that and allowing for time for students to try on questions too is kind of important. Because the first go around, I think I was like, you must have your question, you must have your initial proposal written in the first 3 days.
Yeah.
Which then, like, kids are, like, they're, like, and honestly, I would do the same thing too. It's like, oh, I have to figure out what my passion is in 3 days. I'm just gonna throw down whatever on the page.
I tried to start and I gave mine 45 minutes, so.
Right? Yeah. But it's like, it was like,
That's right.
if you open up the space for them to be able to try on questions, even do some of those initial steps for research. So I have students who did blogs that started out like, that was the part that I obsessed, was they're writing about it. So the blog started out as one thing, and then like weeks in, they're like, well, is this dumb. They're like, do I have to erase it and start over an entire new blog? I was like, no, this is your process. So they could start a whole new series of questions and kind of it became, that's the focus. Because that's what I wanted to read. I wanted to read through thinking. I don't know that for education.
Yeah.
Making it easy to yeah. So that, like, it was more about like that process. And once you kind of get to that point, I think that changes kind of how you're thinking about what students are using classroom time for and how much time you allow students to do particular activities.
Were there any like topics that were just absurd that you were just like, no, this is awful?
For once, I was a little frightened of.
Yeah.
Because I really, was it?
Oh, right.
Yeah, the smoking
The
too.
smoking on the first time.
I'm
so
So, yes,
So,
I had 3 boys in my lower level English class that were like, they thought they were being all joking. Because they knew we were going to connect with our fifth graders. I'm like, I'm going to quit smoking for my project. And I was like, but they like, honestly, like, 16 years old. It's better thing you could do with your time. So I was like, all right, fine.
Yeah.
Do it. So then, like, we did Google Hangouts to connect my students with her fifth graders. And then, of course, they get on screen with her fifth graders. And I'm like, oh, this is live right now. They're like, go to YouTube. What in the world are they going to say? And my one kid, Andrew, gets up on screen. He's like, yeah, I learned how to quit smoking. And then your fifth grader was like, oh, I'm researching that too.
right, because they had just talked about it in politics.
Yep,
That was their topic. They were like, we want to talk more about that.
That was one of those moments of like, there were definitely like, and that's the thing I think as a teacher you've got to let go of. Like there were so many things that I had no clue about, and so like I had to give up because I like that's not what I'm assessing, but I had to give up that control and that needing to know how to do every little piece and wanting to peek in. Because as long as I could see like how they're writing about it, that's the most important thing. So,
I
but yeah.
didn't understand.
What's that?
I had a kid who wanted to evaluate whether lawnmowers could switch their fuel type from LP to something else because lawnmowers were his passion. That kid did, and he said, I don't want to interview students, that's not going to help me. I want to interview people who know about lawnmowers. So I'm on a lawnmower forum, can I interview people there and then study it? And he did an amazing project. I didn't understand a word of it.
I had a kid that
But he
just
really
scrap
got
metal.
everything he was talking about.
That's it. That's her kid wanted to do scrap metal, like how do you make money scrapping metal? And I was like, no idea. No clue. But you're right, like, so then it's kind of exciting being the teacher in that thing too.
You learn a whole lot. Yeah, like I had one who made a case. He started out he wanted to do tree houses specific, and he ended up making this whole proposal as to he figured out that eucalyptus trees are apparently the best trees to build tree houses in. So then he ended up writing this whole proposal as to why they should plant eucalyptus trees at like the back of our school and build tree houses. But it was so interesting, so we learned all about eucalyptus trees.
And I was gonna say too, like, part of it is the success of it is we made sure, I think this past year in particular, like building in the guides sort of along the way. So we started with the idea of the mentor text being the guide. So like my students, like you talked a little bit about like your students using like the 5 books at the opening. My students, we start kind of the first thing in the semester, they do this, I believe, essays, and they have to do like a mentor text analysis, and they go out to the Cycling website, find an example text, and so they get really sick, I'm guessing, of doing the mentor text analysis form. And it's linked in our stuff as well. But that then later on in the second quarter, the other sets them up to start doing mentor text analysis for their own mentors and finding books to go along with the topic. At least that's sort of the goal. So like at one level, we started with that very sort of deliberate, like you need to find the text. And I found out pretty early, especially with the video game kids, that text doesn't necessarily have to be a book. Because if you're wanting to learn gaming, there's no book that if it's in print, it's already obsolete. So opening up like what a text looks like.
Right, this is a conversation too in fifth grade to have, because they're used to being, you have to have 3 books, they have to just be pages,
Yep,
your topic,
yes.
or else it doesn't work. So you know what, it's gonna work, but you're gonna have to find websites, so then we were talking more about website evaluation than we were printed text, but it's all still nonfiction text that they're reading, which is also one of the things that we have to hit. So that was helpful, and we started also with the picture book narrative mentor texts, and then as they went through the research process, we ended up, they had digital texts, so they were pulling their information from, and then we also used print nonfiction as sort of a mentor text for structure of nonfiction text features that they had to include in their final product that I didn't really care about. I didn't check it off, but they made a 6-slide presentation with X, Y, and Z. But we sort of took that approach to say, okay, what do you notice about all of these? We pulled all the nonfiction all over the floor, and that's, jump in, what do you notice they all have in common? And then they sort of went back and created their own.
And we did a similar process, like with them finding like the mentor text kind of along the way. Initially with the writing pieces that we were doing in class, but then specifically like with the digital aspect before, like after we mapped our parts, students knew up front that we would be doing blogs, like instead of a traditional research paper, their product is a blog. And so we started by looking at other students' blog. I don't think your students, I think your class was more than we ended up thinking it. So we looked at like what made a blog effective as a text, like in terms of both the written rhetoric, but also digital rhetoric. So we were doing some of that mentor text analysis again. But then in doing that, it also opened up some of the doors for finding some of the digital mentors, which I think is some of the digital mentors too, because that, I think that was sort of the key part for us too, is not only did students have to have the written text that worked as a mentor text, but they also had to find the expert that they could interview. A lot of those interviews were done via email, so it was like, where do you find the person, and how do you get that email address, and what does an email look like when you're trying to elicit some information from another person. So there was a bit of modeling and mentoring that went on there too. Some people it was in person. I'm not gonna lie, I think I totally emailed and Facebooked every friend that I knew in fields that we were like doing stuff with, and just totally, I was like, oh, I know this person, boom, you can talk with them. But the second go around, like we didn't do that a whole lot. With your class we did. Like I think I took on a lot more ownership the first time I did it, and that I was helping find mentors. The second go around, not quite as much. They were more responsible for finding their own mentors and kind of going out and doing that on their own. We did have, I think I looked at like a Google Doc that had like every student, their blog, their topic, their mentor text, and then I tweeted that out using the 2010 hashtag and using Genius Hour. And so we got some that way, some expert connections, but a lot of them kind of came organically. Either it was a parent, it was another kid who had some expertise, somebody in the community, or a friend of a friend who knew this person who did that. And so it was kind of an organic way of finding some of those digital mentor relationships. How did you guys find your mentors?
Well, I didn't. What is that? It's still
Love it.
But I know, like, I did design and I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, and so I teamed up with my friend Anthony in a way. He was doing like opening up the windows, architecture for schools, and I was like, oh, I don't know any classroom designers. Oh, what do I need to do? So that's like, you came in, you're like, oh, everybody. And then, yeah, I don't know if it's a thing, like a group chat email. Group email, yeah. But, and then I put in a group email with 5 or 6 classroom designers. But that like really helps because I got to research them individually and find out what they did for their classroom designs or library designs.
Yeah, and then you kind of took yours a little bit further too, because not only did you interview via email those people, you then took it back to the school and you talked with our librarian and our help desk or technical person. What did you explain? What did you do?
Well, at first I was doing the classroom design, and then Jordan came up was just like, oh, so our mezzanine is getting rid of all their computers because the Chromebooks are coming. Would you like to redesign it? And I was like, sure, yes. So Ms. Hayes, the tech director, she was kind of in charge of it. So I spoke with her, and we went over and we found a final design for it, and it's nice. I'm excited. They're using it.
Yes, that was the big thing. So like And you initially didn't start out with that, but out of the conversations I think you had both with Anthony, but then other people in the building too, like, we discovered there wasn't a plan for this huge space that was opening up in our building, and so there suddenly became like and they're using it for design as part of what they're doing to redesign part of our media space, which is kind of cool. But it's kind of like opening it up and being okay with taking that risk, and like, I didn't know what you were doing, we didn't know if it was gonna work, but so there's an amount of risk taking that kind of has to happen there. But all along the way, again, it was like, it's linked into like finding those mentor texts and interview skills and doing some of that analysis of rhetoric, both digital and written, that kind of ties it back to, and some people have this great fear, you're doing crazy things in the classroom and no one knows what you're doing, but it really does tie back to those common core skills, especially for me as an English teacher, back to like how students are writing and how they're thinking through critical processes and inquiry, so it does link a lot of that stuff back.
We had similar conversations on the 5th grade side too, because once rolling out found your experts, we sat and connected the 5th and the 10th in this crazy spreadsheet.
That's right.
Yeah, that was fun. Of everybody's topics on both sides and paired them up kind of so that the 10th graders popped into my 5th graders had a Google Doc with their research notes and questions so far. And then they could have a conversation back and forth in like the comments with the 10th graders saying, hey, you might want to reword your question this way, or hey, I found this website you might want to look at. And it was so interesting because then I'm having conversations with 5th graders. Like, oh my goodness, someone actually read that. I need to go change the whole thing.
Because I think my first semester, 10th graders were inside docs the same time your 5th graders were on the some of the.
Oh yeah, it was also simultaneous too. That added to the fun. They're like, they're there right now. Oh yes, we had total chaos for 10 minutes. They're like, yes, and then they explained, who could see what, because they hadn't set it up. We set it up for them, so they're used to, I didn't click share. No, we didn't. Like, I made the doc, so I own it, and we went through that whole process. But we talked a whole lot about sharing too, on the 5th grade side group work, and also a whole lot about commenting, because then they didn't know what to say back. It was so interesting. They're all sitting there. They were like so excited. They were shaking, especially the video game ones, because we have video games on both sides. And it's like 5th grade boys were so excited and running around showing everybody their computer because they got a response. And I'm like, well, okay, well now you should say something back. Me. So then we had to have this whole conversation of, okay, what is the dialogue going to look like when it's digital and going back and forth? How do you respond to comments, that kind of thing, which was so interesting, and sort of came out in the second round, didn't come out in the first round. And there's the first time we did Google Hangouts, which is a live conversation, so the written piece became interesting.
Yeah, and the written piece too, like on the 10th grade side, when my first semester students connected, we and there's moments where you're like, oh yeah, I should have anticipated that, but I didn't anticipate that. And all along the way, we had built in all this stuff about find mentor types, find experts, find models for what you want to do. And then I didn't think that I would need to model how to talk to 5th graders. I should have thought through that one. Most of my students were really, really good. But I did have a couple that were a little academically above where a 5th grader could understand it. So then it was like, a couple of your students were like just question marks now. Through like, who is your audience? And then it actually opened up some really fruitful doors for like how you talk about writing and who you write for and what. Jump in. I was going to say the students are here too. Ask them about their experiences. What do you want to know?
I want to know what role the mentors had. Like, did you assign, like, you have to have this many points of contact for this purpose board, or was it just a general kind of whatever you gained from it? And then for you guys, what role did the mentors have in what you learned and created?
I had a mentor text. We tried to get in contact with all there, but she never.
That's right. She's a really good. She's one of the ones that like, no matter how many times you emailed, she just wasn't in.
Yeah, but we still used her book, and we researched what goes into reality television, what is the truth about reality television. And but we found it very helpful because we see the end product of the reality show. We see whether it's scripted or not. We see the end of it, and we don't see all of the little parts that make it up. And the book helped outline that, and it helped, I guess, outline our journey towards our enterprise, which was like a 12-minute, 15-minute episode that we created of our own called The Word Girls. And so yeah, the mentor text was a very helpful guide. And one of my group members, Amanda, she was the one who kind of took that on, and we kind of, the other one, Lauren, three of us, we kind of worked together with her, because she had read the book, and then she shared notes with us to be one of those things together. So it's helpful to have at least a book or two. Guide.
Also, you guys use some of the YouTube videos too.
Oh my God, yeah. And our own knowledge of watching red television.
The books are a bit more true. I think the mentors, like yours, were a bit more sort of traditional, like, because you both are back from person. What's your person? Oh, that's right. You changed it on us. That's right. So rather than doing, like the elementary students here, Emily and Jenna did interviews with people, she did primary research, and Kristen ended up interviewing what was supposed to be the entire student body, and ended up being the entire middle school student body.
Oh my God.
and a good chunk of the high school student body for her project, and that became the mentor text. Like she had to figure out what to do with all that stuff.
Yeah, but since I'm related to class, I thought it was a good idea to take classes so that people like I thought school and everything. Nice thing.
So her interviews were more with students to kind of guide the creation of the course rather than. Because in your case, the experts were the students. But we ran into issues this go around with students who didn't hear back from the experts that they had sent out emails to. And the way that I've kind of come to understand like how that changes the process, it doesn't. Well, it does and it doesn't. Because again, like as an English teacher, I want to see how students are writing about that. So they would post their interview questions onto their blog, and then they had a week and would wait to hear back for a week. If they didn't hear back, then that sort of reflection on the interview process was, well then, what happened that I didn't hear back? What's going on? What am I feeling? What information am I missing? And the students could still write on that without having the feedback from. Now the students who did get feedback from were a little bit better prepared. But then the students who didn't get that feedback had to search elsewhere. So where do I find the information that I am missing in order to complete the project?
What about the final products? Did you have guidelines for what the students were producing with their learning and knowledge, and how did you grade or evaluate that?
I did and I didn't. So the product piece of it, they had to share outside of the classroom. That was the stipulation. You had to find some way to share what it is that you're doing outside of the classroom. So yours was put together a YouTube video. Emily did redesign her library space. Kristen put together a course guideline that was shared with our principal. So they had to find some way to share it outside the class. The way that that's assessed, though, is how they wrote about it on the blog. So they had to share about that piece on the blog, and then ultimately my second semester students had to do a TED Talk based on what they learned in the process of doing that and putting it together into an interview. But the product itself wasn't assessed. The writing about the product and doing all that research was, but I'm an English teacher again, great person put together a course curriculum guide, which I can look at that as an English teacher and I can assess that. But how do I assess a reality television show? That's not my area of expertise. Or I had kids that did cake decorating or coding. This student last year made a pig jump over across the screen. That was, he learned how to do JavaScript. But I can't, that's not what I care about. I care about how the students write about it. So they're writing about the research and they're writing about the inquiry and process. That's what gets assessed. So it's that blog. And for the blog piece, they did have, these are the blogs that you had to have. You had to have your proposal, which introduced the blog. You had to have a pitch video, which in under 2 minutes explained what your project was. You had to have 7 to 10 interview questions, your interview reflection, your action plan, like all of those pieces along the way. That's what kind of sense. Our hope was that we could utilize having the students here too. So if you have like any questions, what it looks like, or also kind of thinking through how this might work in your classroom and how you bring it to your classroom, now would be a good time to kind of start to talk out some of those ideas, brainstorm. Because we have people who have done it before, we've got some experts who have those thoughts. But please, what are your concerns? What are your questions about bringing this back into the classroom?
I guess my biggest concern, which I kind of said in the beginning, was just being, which you could adjust a little bit too, just being able to structure it a little bit for them so that you're not just starting out and saying, okay, do whatever you want. Because I know that at 6th grade, that's what I find, that especially, and it is like the highest students too, the ones that you think will be able to take it on, that just sit there and don't know what to do because they need your guidance. So I guess whether it's coming from you or from you, just any other tips that you can give that still allows them to take something on and have that choice, but still kind of structures it in a little bit of a way.
We used a lot of templates for the 5th grade to sort of guide that thinking process. And some needed them more than others. Some, were right off. But if you were a person sitting there, and it is especially the high kids, were like, well, I want you to tell me what to do.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. So it's okay, here's, so we ended up with more of a structure of, okay, what are 3 things that you are interested in? And then it was, can you turn one of those into a question? Tell me everything you know about this topic. Or like, what do you still not know? We sort of structured the thinking that way. And like Google Doc templates and our stuff as well. Feel free to take it, cut it apart, whatever. But that was helpful in the beginning because they do sit and stare at it.
Even though I was kind of like the guinea pigs, and she did kind of just send us running sheet, Ms. Ward also gave us deadlines for certain things, which I found extremely helpful. And another part of the project that was helpful was with the blog post because you reflected on your week. And it wasn't just like, oh, we did this week. Like how did it go? Was it hard? Was it difficult? Whatever you wanted to say about it. And it was almost like your own records of what worked and what didn't work. And that is always helpful because you don't want to make the same mistake twice. And doing the blog posts were helpful to not do those things. I guess you could say.
But I have to say, I think that was probably the hardest part with it. And I haven't got it down yet. I'm still working on this. Because one of my goals was I wanted to see students write more reflectively about it and not just a step by step. I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. So that's not showing that depth of knowledge. And so by adding in more, especially we did it better, I think, first semester, more opportunities for the students to read other blogs, student blogs that were doing really similar things. I think that was helpful. I should have done it, I think, second go round. But there are a number of teachers, especially like at the secondary level, who are having students do blogs about inquiry-based projects. So initially I was going to do quad blogging. Quad blogging is a great little site. I think it's just quadblogging.net. You sign up your class and you're matched with 3 other classrooms in the country, and then you take turns responding and commenting on the other classes' blogs. So it's a way to build in feedback. I just emailed a few teachers that I knew were also doing it. So I had a teacher out in St. Louis that was doing it. I had a teacher in Newmanville, Chad Ford, that was doing similar things with his 8th grade class. So we kind of found, I knew a couple of other teachers, but having that built in, commenting back and forth on the blogs was incredibly helpful for a couple reasons. One is when students log in and they're like, oh, I'm doing page views. Suddenly that knowledge of, wait, there's somebody reading this, like I have to step up my game a little bit. But then also because there was reflection back through the commenting, I think that ups the students wanting to respond to that reflectively and not just the step-by-step. And there was a couple of blog posts like the action plan that was like, I need you to write step-by-step, tell me what you're planning on doing, so that we can look back on it in 7 weeks and go, hey, I didn't do that, and this is why I didn't do it. But having, I think that, like, that pushing that reflection a bit forward and having that as sort of more of a format kind of thing helps with it too.
Tool-wise, if you're under their blog is fabulous. You use it. Yeah, it's fully compliant. I can double check whatever they signed in September too, but we use that with my second graders, not with fifth. And you as the teacher can control how open or closed it is. So I did it in second grade with all 4 sections of second grade, which was cool enough for them that, you know, the kid in the room next door, because I only see him in library, was commenting on it. So that worked on our. Eventually, they did open numbers all the way up, sent home more permission slips each round, got a little bigger, so that the parents or grandparents were leaving them comments. And we ended up, for that project, we were doing programs that day, so we actually had other people actually leaving the comments, which was really cool. But even to start at your 6th grade, I mean, in the periods,
Right.
even to start small, you know, it was helpful for us. Because we had to have a whole conversation too about what the blog was. In grade, we started posting like paper blogs.
Good afternoon, everybody. Session 3 is about to end in a few minutes. Session 3 is about to end. We'll move on to session 4. And again, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. We have one more session, but thank you to everybody for attending tomorrow's class. Bye-bye.
So don't hesitate, we have our stuff on there too, like, shoot us an email or feel free to contact us if you have any questions, or kind of want a bit more in depth of sort of what it is that we're doing, or to see more examples.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna shut our live stream off.